Yeah. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Danya Cretta, co-owner of the Dog Bookshop, and we have an exciting interview for you guys today. So come in. We're getting ready to get started. We are hitting several different channels, so grab your friends, share, like, and do all the social media things. Give us your digital currency by like, follow, and share. Do everything because we are about to set up for an exciting interview with Robert Callahan. I am so excited. So again, everyone, continue to share. We're going to get started. But let me tell you a little bit about the Doc Bookshop. The Doc Bookshop is one of the largest African American owned bookstore in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have all types of sections in our store, from greeting cards to fiction, nonfiction. We have a Western section. We have just personal care, home care, and we also have the opportunity for you to shop online. You can go to the Doc Bookshop and shop online and get all your books. And we even have our vinyl collection now online as well. So we have the books and music in store and online. So continue, everyone. Gather. We have a great show. Okay. I'm watching everybody gather and see what's going on. Okay. Donna, are we up and ready to go? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Robert, oh my God, let me introduce him. You guys, I am just so excited. If you have ever had a chance to go to Robert Callahan's social media, you know that this is going to be an exciting conversation. Robert Callahan, did I pronounce your last name right?
Yep, you got it.
Robert Callahan II, don't let me leave off say, is a prolific writer and accomplished attorney dedicated to his practice at Callahan and King in the heart of Waco, Texas. Brazos River. Are you right by the Brazos? Yeah, oh my God, I love my rivers. He earned a BA in political science from Gonzaga University. I'm going to get that again. Did you go to any of the basketball games? Okay, we'll talk about that later. And a JD at Baylor University School of Law, where he now serves as an adjunct professor of integrating faith, and legal practice. In 2020, Callahan was named Lawyer of the Year by the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of education right there. With that undeniable talent for blending humor, you go to his, so he's going to give you his social media page. If you get a chance, go out there. I'm talking, you will be laughing for days. And we're going to touch on that a little bit. He takes the spotlight in the arenas, three ring circles of law, race, and religion. Three ring circles, law, race, and religion. Man, that is loaded. Man, okay. Make sure you tag, follow, share, and like, because you guys, only the Doc Bookshop can bring these types of conversation. And thank you to the people that showed up today. Our audience. We had such a great, intimate audience, and I just love it. So I thank you. So go ahead and introduce us. Tell us more about what I did read, and introduce us to your book, Fire in the Hole.
First of all, I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you for having me here. So this is an honor and a privilege. Thank you all for being here, for listening. And it just means everything that my words mean something to someone else. Mm-hmm. So what if I told you that your anger with the way that white Christianity has performed over the last decade is holy? What if I told you that the frustration that we feel, especially after this last week, seeing the marriage of the white church and politics and how that lands on Black and brown bodies, on the marginalized, on the LGBTQIA community, on women, on the disabled? What if I told you that all of those frustrations are righteous because God himself is frustrated? And so therefore we have every right to be angry. That's the premise behind the book. And the book is titled Fire in the Hole, WHOLE. It's a pun. And that's intentional because the point is sort of pointing to that verse in Jeremiah 29. He basically says, every time that I talk about the Lord, I'm made to feel like the subject of ridicule. But if I don't, then I feel like it's this fire that's trapped in my bones. So what else can I do? I can't help but talk about it. That's the frustration that I think that a lot of minorities, okay, and again, I include in that women, the LGBTQIA, the disabled, BIPOC, feel about race, and specifically about talking about race in the context of the church. And so what I wanted people to understand is that the way that we've been made to feel is essentially racialized spiritual abuse. And there's a path to healing from that. And as I've gone through my reconstruction journey, because I had to break all these things down and find that path for myself, I wanted to explore not just how we got here. There's lots of books talking about how we got here, but how do we heal from this? Where do we go from here? And so in our reconstruction journey, I want everyone knowing that that anger that we feel towards white Christianity is righteous, and it's sacred and it's holy.
I know you said there's a lot of books, and thank you for that opening, because I think a lot of our community needs to hear this and understand this, and they have a right, as we deal with our spirituality, as we deal with religion, how do we put that in context of what's going on in the world today. But before we jump into healing and reconciliation, okay, okay, I want to understand. I think we have to do some foundational things. I have to talk about history,
right,
and how we got here,
yeah,
and how the church within the construct of the church, how they became separated,
right,
how they became separated over slavery.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that the church was separated. There was the church wanted to be a part of slavery,
right,
to keep the institution of slavery alive, keep systematic slavery alive. But there was another part, and that was the separation too. So do you cover that, or give us a little backdrop of the historical elements that created the race situation within the church?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is divided into 3 parts. And in the first part, that's sort of our talking about how we got here. In the first part, I use fire as a metaphor, as a beacon to rally us all together. If you've ever been in someone's backyard behind a fire pit, or around a bonfire, or even just in a fireplace, you know that those are just really intimate conversations that we can have around fire together. And so what I wanted to do is to say, let's rally together and let's talk about how we got here. Let's talk about all the different things that we need to lament and process and recognize we're not crazy for seeing. And to recognize that those things that we feel are valid, and that we deserve the dignity of recognizing those things. And so we do talk about, in that first part, pretty much everything from a legal standpoint, from Reconstruction to present day, that shows that these platitudes like all lives matter have never historically been true in our nation. And so, I mean, we can go all the way back to the Declaration even back to the Declaration of Independence, and how ironic it was that at the same time that the founders were penning all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but they didn't see us as men. We weren't people. And so I talk about that. I talk about Plessy versus Ferguson. I talk about separate but equal. I talk about Brown versus Board of Education. I talk about Loving. I talk about how we used to be, if you were 1/8 Black, that was enough to strike you out. You were called an octoroon. The development of the 1-drop rule. I talk about, we get all the way up into the modern gutting of the Voting Rights Act. And so I want people to understand, like, there is importance for us to talk about how we got here. But then I want to move forward, right? I want, in part 2 of the book, to say, now let's take all this stuff that we recognize as true, the way that we have to wear a metaphorical mask in society and pretend like everything is fine. In fact, there's a chapter that talks specifically about I'm fine. The way that we have to deal with the erasure and the gaslighting, the way that we are made to believe that we just have to just keep producing. Just let's keep going. Just keep dribbling. Shut up about it. Don't protest. Don't wear those shorts, those shirts. Don't talk about that woke theology, CRT,
It's
Marxism,
kind of suppression.
communism. Yeah, right, right. It's just all the ways that society tells us that we are less than. I want to literally have people imagine taking that off their shoulders, writing it down on a piece of paper, and throwing it into a literal fire. I actually encourage people to gather around fire pit, fireplace, bonfire, something, and take that stuff and say, I'm not carrying this anymore.
Mhm.
I recognize that I've been silenced and I'm not going to be anymore. And I'm getting rid of it.
Mhm.
In part 3 of the book, then the fire becomes an illuminating light.
Mhm.
And it leads us, sort of like the Israelites, going behind a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, into a new place, into a new territory, a healing place. And that's my goal for us in the book.
I want to go jump into some terms.
Yeah.
Because in the first part, you define what is white Christianity.
Yeah.
I really want to understand that term, and why do you think it was so important to define that term?
That's a great question.
As you go into the foundation, as you go into the need for healing and reconciliation.
Yeah,
What is that?
That's a great question. And it hits you right on the cover of the book, because the subtitle is Embracing Our Righteous Anger with White Christianity and Reclaiming Our Wholeness. And so, sort of controversially, a lot of people said, well, is it, why are you talking about white Christianity? Is it just Christianity? Is it evangelicalism? What is it?
Yeah.
And I really wrestle with, what is it that we're dealing with when we're talking about the problem? And famously, 81% in 2016, 81% of white Americans identified as white born-again evangelical Christians identified as Trump supporters. And so how do we identify that knot in society that we're dealing with? And the fact of the matter is that something as nebulous as like white patriarchal Christian heteronormative cisgendered Christian nationalism it's too much. We need a label. And so
it's too much.
And so what I realized is, like, okay, in the Bible Belt, we understand who we're talking about if we were to talk about evangelicalism. But you get into the Northeast, you leave America and you go look at the Latino church, you go look at the African evangelical church. Like, evangelicalism doesn't have that political weight outside of the United States, because evangelicalism is bigger than just this political entity that has married itself to faith. And so it's not evangelicalism. It's not about a theological construct by itself. And the problem exists, as you pointed out. I mean, the Southern Baptist Convention was created literally over the institution of slavery. So the problem exists in Baptist tradition, Catholic tradition, the Presbyterian, Methodist. They all share some fault somewhere. So what are we dealing with? I use 2 definitions in the book. On page 13, the first definition that I use, this is sort of like the King James Version English of the definition, right? I say, white Christianity must serve as shorthand to describe those whose orthodoxy and orthopraxy are dictated by an unshakable yet misguided tangle of faith and right-bridled political and social conviction that are antithetical to everything Christ represents. So then, if that's King James, on the next page, we have sort of the NIV, or the Message version, right? And it says, white Christianity is also that subset of Christianity that intentionally ignores or does not consciously consider the effects of racism or prejudice in either the church or society on the marginalized, nor cares to, having been given the resources and information to do so. So the point being, there are religious institutions that see or choose to ignore or choose to pretend like they don't exist the plight of the marginalized, but they have so normalized this majority American cultural idea of what we are supposed to believe and how we show up in society based on that belief. And so that's the rut that they have confined us in, and we have to break out of it.
Do you see us breaking out of it? I don't, even though I know you mentioned this term of healing and getting past, but I just think of tossing it into the fire. At some point you have to come back into society. You're at that fire, you put it in the fire, but you have to come back. You have to come back, and you may come back to a George Floyd situation, where there's that guilt.
Yeah.
You may have to come back and recognize that. How do you then continue to move past, move beyond, dive in, get to that space, get back into that space where I just pushed off all this off my shoulders, but I'm back there.
Yeah. So that's where part 3 of the book comes in, and that's an important question because we know what the problem is, and then we want to commit to divesting ourselves of those issues, that weight that we've been carrying. But we do have to continue to operate within these systems and these structures in society. So how do we go about doing
And that changes every 4 years, right?
Right. And even just, if I'm a teacher, I have coworkers that I work with who are, very conservative leaning, who don't understand my plight. If I go to church, I've got people who want to throw Romans 13, just obey those in authority at me, and they don't understand what I'm feeling and I'm going through. Like everywhere we move in society, there's someone that doesn't relate to where we are, and they don't care to. And so what I do in the last part of the book is I actually suggest some ways that we can go about moving into healing as we are even still moving within society. So, for example, one of the ways that I talk about is creating your own community. I think we spend a lot of time, especially in the Bible Belt, looking for the right faith community to be in. And we can spin our wheels almost endlessly, hopping from church to church every Sunday, throwing our hearts on the altar every time, hoping that this time we're going to find the right congregation that understands what we're going through. And so what I found is instead of doing that, I needed to create my own community instead of finding a community. And if you are in a place where you're so isolated that creating community can't necessarily happen in person, then I encourage people, parasocial relationships, really lean into those. If you can find a community that's supportive, but it's not a faith community, just find community right now. If you are, for example, nursing a broken arm, there's a time and a place where you will do physical therapy. You'll do strength testing at some point in time. But when it's first broken, you have to isolate that injury and just baby it and protect it. And so in the same way for our spirits, we need to just find safe places that we can just be and not have to challenge ourselves, not be told that we're sitting in an echo chamber, not be told that there's some way that we need to show up different than us just being there.
I like how you say create community. And it can sound somewhere it could be like an individual mission. But creating community has happened in the past. And creating communities has been destroyed through religion, through beliefs in the Bible, through messages in the Bible. Communities have been destroyed. And so I always believe we have to somehow learn from history. So you create your community, your safe space, but how do you protect it? How do you stop that arm from being further damaged or hurt again? How do you protect it? Because those are things as we move forward and try to build on your term of creating community, you have to protect it.
Yeah.
Because it has been times where we know Tulsa, on a deeper historical sense, we know all those communities, but today, how do you think that is it achievable? Is it truly achievable? Even though you mentioned it, is it truly achievable? Yeah.
So if the question is, how do we create community? The answer is slowly, intentionally, and zealously. And we have to defend it. And so what I mean by that is it won't do us well to move from one toxic space into creating another one. And so if it means that maybe we start with there's one other person that we know we vibe with, we're on the same page with. I don't need to ask how they voted. I know exactly where they are. If that community is just us two, okay, let's start there. If that's just all it is, that's good enough. If that life raft is enough to get me through, rather than trying to build a necessarily like a home church, if you can, that's great. If it works for you, I applaud that. But it doesn't for everyone. And it's okay for it to be just this small group, just this small lifeboat of survivors, to start with. And if it builds, it builds. But if it doesn't, if that's okay. And I also encourage people that just like the grief process, no one can tell you how to grieve in a way that's that is different than how you need to grieve. It takes you as long as you need to grieve, and you grieve the way that you need to grieve. In the same way, we're grieving through the loss of community. And so however long it is that we have to be in this lifeboat, until we feel like, okay, now I can move from here. That process takes as long as it takes. If it takes 3 months, 6 months, if you don't have a church home that you can go to for a year, but you're finding some, pastor online that streams a church in Austin or somewhere else, and all you can do is just once a month sit down in front of the computer screen and stream that service. Go with that. Whatever brings you life, that's what you need to focus on doing. So that's just one of the ways that we talk about getting out of that rut.
We also had and just getting out of the rut, we also had a community led by the Baha'i faith that meets here. And they do this thing called meaningful conversations. And one of the major topics was dealing with racism. And these were different groups from all different spiritual systems of religions, Lutheran, Presbyterians, and they just come here. It's just led by the Baha'i group. And one thing they talked about was racism. How, even in the community, how do you get that church to really lead those discussions and talk about racism? How do you move to that level? And it was a conversation that just bounced around, not really getting a foundation in place, not really getting a position of really dealing with racism because we know it exists. And now, how do we talk about it without dealing with the fragility that comes with it?
Right.
Because at some point you have to deal with the historical elements, like you said, that created this racist institution, this racist concept. So I guess my question is, how do you truly get the church to really deal with racism?
I think that the most important thing for us to keep in consideration with that question is that it may not be that we can get a particular congregation or the white church as an institution to address it and to deal with it. And that's a hard and very sombering realization that I think that we have to move into acceptance of. What I stress for people who are in our situation is to understand if they wanted to, they would. In this age where we all have these computers that are slightly larger than a playing card that we carry about on our person, that give us access to the entire repertoire of the world's history in any language you want to receive it, there is no excuse for ignorance. And so if they wanted to understand, if they wanted to learn, if they wanted to grow, if they wanted to create safe spaces for us, they would. And so instead of us begging and pleading, Pastor,
Right.
will you still please,
Right.
can I get you to read this book? Can I get you to, will you listen to this podcast?
Right.
Maybe if I stay here
That's
a little bit
connecting with you
longer,
guys, right?
maybe if I stay here a little bit longer, I can change the institution from the inside out, like this rebellion, right? Because the Bible and the church has built me up to believe that I'm David, right? And that I'm Esther, and it was for such a time as this. It's got to be me.
Right,
It's got to
right.
be me. And so maybe if I do this and that, if they wanted to, beloved, they would. So when you understand that, there's a liberation in understanding I don't have to occupy this toxic
Wow.
space anymore. And so I am going to go create a community that's safe for me if I can't find one.
Right, right. I got a little, I want to dive into this pass me not section of
Yeah.
it because I just got a little gift, not a gift, but what is that? Don't even know. You guys, if you read the book, you're gonna know that he talks about vinyls.
Sam Cooke.
I said, okay, this is I got to bring this out. So I was like, okay. So tell the world like what does Sam Cooke really mean in Fire in the Hole?
Yeah, so in the book, I wanted this to, because it's part of a healing process, I wanted the book to invoke as many of the five senses as I could.
And you did a great job with that. He did a great job with it.
Thank you. So I wanted people to see, to hear, to be able to touch. And so that's why I encourage people to gather around fires, to fireplaces, fire pits, and such like that. And one of the things that I do is I talk about music that was inspirational to me and music that really spoke to some of the feelings that we're processing through in the book. So one of the songs that means so much is Pass Me Not.
Mm-hmm.
But then another one is A Change Is Gonna Come.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. And so that's why Sam Cooke and so many others mean so much to me. In fact, in the book, you'll find that there's a Spotify playlist that has been created by myself and the publisher in order to help people to process through these feelings. And it's right on the fourth page, right after the main title page. And so you can actually access some of the songs that we talk about in the book, some of the songs that I listened to while I was writing the book, because I want people to be able to sit in front of a fire, to feel the warmth of it, to see the words on the page, to hear ourselves talking about our frustrations and our pains, and to hear the music. You know, I want that all to be part of the healing experience. Pass Me Not is so powerful because it's invoking that image of the blind beggar that's screaming out to Jesus, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And there are just so many times that we as minorities feel passed up. And I talk about how Martin Luther King Jr. famously said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
Right.
And I love the poetic, inspirational idea of what he has said, but the lived reality that we occupy is so often we feel passed up. We have so many tallies in the loss column when we're checking the score. And so we find ourselves sort of like that blind beggar screaming out.
That's powerful. This is some powerful. But this book is so metaphorical. It's just, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just, it's almost shouting material, but you can't go there.
Yeah.
But I do want you talk about Fannie J. Crosby. For those that don't know, you know, the hymn, what is it? Pass Me Not.
Pass me not, oh gentle Savior. I'm done because I can't sing.
But I mean, it's just, you bring so much to light, and I've read a ton of books, but how you constructed the spiritual hymns and music and uh, I don't know, just everything in this book is just great. And the fact that we are in a season that we can just sit by the fire and talk and both knowledge and information is just, it's just amazing. So you guys, you can get this book Fire in the Hole. We are going to continue the conversation, but if you're just wondering if I can get this book, you can go to the Doc Bookshop. If you're online or if you're in the Fort Worth, Dallas Fort Worth area, you can certainly come by the Doc Bookshop. But it's on our first front page of our website, and you can get this book today. And this is a great. If you got groups, oh my God, groups get together, and this is just, it's so power packed. It is so loaded with information. Groups, we can be talking for days and nights. You know, I don't know, do we break wine? No, I don't know if you touched on that, but I don't know. Did anybody from the audience have questions? I don't want to hog anything. What are you thinking? Is it a lot of information? Just a lot to digest?
Yes, it is a lot to digest, but I mean, you have to take time to break it up into different pieces for your understanding and processing it, because it is relevant in today's society and exactly what's happening currently right now. So, it's just a lot to digest.
Yeah.
How much of your background? You know, you mentioned all the cases. I said, you know, when you were talking about all those cases, I was like, you should, because that's your experience. That's what you do. That's what your education is. But how difficult was that in shaping the framework of this book? All the different cases that you presented, because you said you did. I don't know, Plessy versus Ferguson. You just brought in a lot of those.
Yeah, and as she said, like there's so much to digest. And when I got to that chapter, where I start going through the historical research and the cases that shaped our jurisprudence, most of the chapters had like 4,000 words on average. When I turned that one into the publisher, I had 9,000 words. And the publisher said, "Is there music?"
Yes, there is. There's music.
Okay.
It's not true. Yeah.
When I turned that chapter into the publisher, I had 9,000 words. And the publisher wrote me back and said, "Hey, most of your chapters are about 4,000 words or something like that. This one is more than double that. Do you have any ideas?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, good luck, because I just that took so much out of me because there was so much there. And it's just, I think that people forget that it has just been one half degree turn, incremental change after one half degree turn, incremental change after another in our nation in order for us to get to where we are. And every step of the way we were fought. We weren't people. We were chattel. We had to fight over that. Okay, they're people. Do they get to go to school? Let's fight over that. Okay, they get to go to public school 1 through 12, but do they get to go to college? Let's fight about that. Do they get to go to law school? Let's fight about that. You are 1/8 Black, and you want to be on this train. Is it okay for you to sit with the white people? Okay, you can sit with the white people, but only if the train is from point A in the same state to point B in the same state. If it's going between states, let's fight about that. Okay, you can do that, right? But it's one thing after another. And every step along the way, we were fought, even though the law was clear. The Supreme Court told us, like, knock it off. Racism bad. Let's stop. What's the problem? But we had to keep fighting the fight because it just wasn't accepted. And so when I'm looking at today how we are received and how we have these fears and these anxieties and these frustrations, and people don't seem to understand where we're coming from, I'm like, what is it about American history that makes you think that all lives really matter? We have had constantly to fight just to keep our heads above water.
Right. It's been a tremendous fight, and it's been a tremendous journey for African Americans. And I think I like how you started this conversation off. all the things that you wear, all the things that you believe. Let's ball it up and toss it. You know, we cannot continue to operate in that type of space. And it's okay that we feel that way. Oh, you got a question? I'm sorry.
Well, actually, I was just going to ask Mr. Callahan, because I was just reading through your different chapters that you have. If you had to read from one, which one would you read from? Like, which one really? Because you got some good. I mean, it's really some great titles, like Break the Silence. The new Jim Crow theology.
If you haven't gotten the book yet, he opens right up with Lift Every Voice and Sing.
So I'm just curious, A Newer Hope.
I think.
So, which one would you?
I think considering where we are on this day, it would be more than fine. Because the premise of that chapter is that I've learned when people ask me, I say just by default, when people ask me, how are you feeling? How are you doing? I'll just say, I'm fine. And I don't really process through it. And what therapy, Normalize It, has taught me is that when I'm saying I'm fine, what's really happening is I'm not processing, or I'm not dealing with, I'm avoiding what I'm really feeling. And so I have all these traumas as a lawyer that I'm witnessing, and helpers. I mean, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a doctor, EMT, like if you are a parent, we're constantly dealing with processing traumas, and just told, suck it up, keep going, I'm fine, keep producing. And so when I was challenged on that, I had to find, I don't think I am fine. And so there is something insidious about the idea that we're not allowed to process through our trauma, and that we're expected to just keep going. So let me go towards the back of the chapter.
I like permission to leave. I did.
So let me pick up on page 34. So it seems in the end that white evangelical voters wanted a strong man who could stand against all the dangers and fears stoked by partisan politics and reclaim ground they felt was lost under the tenure of the first black president. They sought a rugged cowboy, even if only a caricature of one, a John Wayne to lead through the wilderness to the promised land despite severity of his moral failings. When it came to evangelical masculinity, writes Dumais, the ideological extreme bore a remarkable resemblance to the mainstream. It was a vision that promised protection for women, but left women without defense, one that worshipped power and turned a blind eye to justice, and one that transformed the Jesus of the Gospels into an image of their own making. And so it was. Politics and polite society would never be the same again. We've almost forgotten that for nearly a decade, there were real live human beings who believed that Barack Obama was a Muslim terrorist with a forged birth certificate, intent on bringing Sharia law to the United States and stealing everyone's guns. Yet, time having proven such fears for naught, no apologies are forthcoming. Remember the Access Hollywood video in which Trump admitted to sexually assaulting a married woman whom he grabbed by the pussy? Were it that it had gotten no worse? Characterizing Mexican immigrants as drug dealers and rapists, portraying Vietnam War hero John McCain as a loser, sexually degrading a celebrity apprentice contestant, 2 impeachments, multiple indictments, $355 million in civil fraud penalties, an $83.3 million jury verdict for defamation to accompany a $5 million jury verdict against him in a writer's sexual abuse and defamation claim later. There are no deal breakers for Trump's conservative evangelical base. Not even Trump selling gold high top sneakers during Black History Month as a stereotypical marketing ploy to gain Black voters, or hawking a God Bless the USA Bible during Holy Week ahead of Easter has alienated Trump from his voter base. Equally as bad, Trump's dominating cultural influence has increased our tolerance for scandals and moral deficiency in and outside of Christianity. In November 2016, oh, well, that's just a segment. But it's probably should have done trigger warning. But like
Yes.
I just feel like we need to appreciate that we're processing something.
What
We're
does it
not
say
okay.
about us as a society, that both as the world look at us, and we have all this information, what you would call evidence.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It
What does that say about us as a society?
it's just I feel like we've lost the plot and it's gone too far. I feel like we've reached the tipping point. My concern, and this is a little bit of a rant, and I do want to leave people with hope, but I also feel like it's very important for us to recognize the moment that we're in. There were a lot of people day after the election that posted things on social media like, okay, now it's time to start the work. Now let's roll our sleeves up and get things done. And like, first of all, I have not had my first cup of coffee. Okay. But but second of all, my concern is that I'm afraid that this was our last stand.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I feel like it's more important than ever for us to find these safe places to gather together and to be each other's encouragement and each other's refuge, because we're not just okay. And I don't know when society is going to get its act together again. But we've always, in a sense, we've kind of always been here,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we knew white supremacy existed.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that we were surrounded. We knew that misogyny was integrated into the DNA of this culture. But we need a safe place to just be able to live, to be able to thrive, to seek our own flourishing. We need to build our own tables the way that you Yeah, I mean, and